Under the scorching sun, thousands of protesters gather outside the Sudanese army headquarters in Khartoum for Friday prayers. The sermon is heavily laden with political messages condemning the regime of deposed former President Omar al-Bashir. Messages too urging the demonstrations continue until the protesters achieve their goal, a return to civilian rule in Sudan. As soon as the prayers are over, the now familiar chants fill the air.
We need a civilian government to set up a foundation for a modern Sudan, followed by elections that have integrity and represent the will of the people.
The former regime divided the people through segregation and racism, and today we are united as one nation, without tribe, creed or colour. We are ready to develop a progressive Sudan.
The protesters were camped outside the military headquarters even before Bashir was removed from office. Although the Transitional Military Council has given in to some of their major demands, the protesters are still digging in for a fight and refusing to disperse. The feeling here is that the council is simply buying time, hoping the protesters will be disappointed and then go home. Despite international support for the protesters, the 10-member military council has so far resisted calls for a transition to a civilian administration. They argue any small vacuum could propel Sudan into a civil war. 3 council members submitted their resignations on Wednesday under pressure from protest leaders who said they represented the interest of al-Bashir's old regime. That triggered jubilation among the protesters, who massed in their tens of thousands for what organizers hoped will be a million-strong march. In the past few days, their numbers have been bolstered, with many people arriving from other parts of Sudan to join the sit-in. Mohammed, Adow, Al Jazeera, Khartoum, Sudan.
And Mohammed has been among the protesters and sent this update from Khartoum.
As you can see behind me, the number of protesters has started to grow, and that's what happens every day during the hours of the afternoon. But today is an important day for the protesters because it's the first time the joint committee between the military council and the leadership of the protest meets to discuss ways to take the country into a transition, and that transition should lead to handing over power to civilians. But there is a number of sticking points being discussed today. Protesters want 4 years transition in which they can be able, as they say, to smooth the path and make the necessary preparations to get rid of the former regime, to implement transitional justice, and also to prepare the ground for a real and decent election in this country. The military say they need only 2 years transition. So that's a sticking point. But also the other important point is who leads the Supreme Presidential Sovereign Council in this period. The military have already said that they would like to be the leaders of that council. The civilians, the protesters, say they need a council, a civilian council, majority civilian members with only a limited military representation. These are just some of the points that they are going to discuss today. And the expectation is that it's not going to be just one day for solving those problems. The protesters here say they have the necessary resolve to continue in this heat until all the demands of the revolution are met.